you want it, you work hard, study hard, you will succeed.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Well, greetings and welcome to the Global Classroom. Today, you'll be joining millions of children from 193 countries around the world as we explore health and our body. I want to thank all of our partners, WHO, UNICEF, Smithsonian Science Education Centre, National Geographic Society, BMG, Penguin Random House, and Neou for their support and guests. In this special episode, we want to also extend our great thanks to the Zachor Foundation as well, with Ben Lesser. My name is Jeff Shaw. I'm headmaster from Scarisbrick Hall School, where I'm coming to you live from the Oak Room at Scarisbrick Hall. I want to remind everyone watching today, you can also put your questions forward in the live Q&A section at the side of your screen, and also choose your own language in your settings for subtitles. Our body is incredible and unique. And we're always learning more things about it through medicine, advice, through the history books as well, and the ancient wisdoms. Today, we'll explore our health, our nutrition, overcoming challenges and adversity, and even especially how we breathe and the impact that has on our overall health and well-being. We're going to hear from experts, from authors, from doctors, and get ready to take part in some physical exercise and some stretching as well. We journey together around the world as we explore the wonder that is our human body. Let's get started. We're going to head straight across to National Geographic to Andrew Brennan to introduce our first guest. Andrew.
Thank you, Jeff, and welcome back to everyone watching. As some of you might remember, my name is Andrew. I am a National Geographic explorer working to support young people across the planet who are overcoming challenges in their lives and solving problems facing their community. This work has led me to speak with hundreds of young people all over the world. I've spoken with folks who have met with presidents, changed laws, and even one teenager who saved an entire species of turtles. But through all these conversations, there's something that I've noticed. Almost every single young person who's out there changing the world has had to overcome a significant challenge in their life, usually one that's completely out of their control. What sets a leader apart is that they refuse to let these barriers define them, but rather see these challenges as an opportunity to prove what's possible. And that's exactly the way our guest Kartik approaches life. Kartik is blind. This means it's challenging for him to see in the way most people do. However, as an advocate and technologist who has not let his disability impede the pursuit of his personal and professional goals, Kartik has inspired and empowered dozens of others around the world with disabilities to be successful tech professionals as he has become. As the first blind student in India to pursue a science education in high school, Kartik has advocated to change the rules so that blind students across the country can pursue sciences in high school. So without further ado, let me introduce my friend, Kartik Sawhney.
Hi, Andrew. Thank you so much for that very kind introduction.
Absolutely, Kartik. I am, have been inspired by you for, ever since I first met. And I have to ask, as a 24, barely 25-year-old, serving as an engineer at one of the world's largest tech companies in Microsoft, while simultaneously building an organization to support young people. You've done a lot, but I want to actually start from the beginning. Can you tell us a little bit about what it was like for you growing up and how you approached the fact that you saw a little bit differently than some of your classmates?
Yeah, it was difficult, to be honest. And I think it all started with my parents having no idea of how to support me as a blind student, as a blind kid, with having no experience at all. I got lucky in some ways because they were able to meet a mentor who was able to tell them about this institution called the National Association for the Blind in Delhi in India, which is where my journey began. And this was a special school for the blind where I picked up a lot of the blindness specific skills. So for example, Braille, or how can I work on a computer, for example. And that was a very protected environment because I was basically being trained by people who knew how blind people work. They had all the information. All of my peers were blind, so that was great. And that was like the first couple, I think 2 or 3 years of my life, of my formative education, was really awesome. But then actually when I was about 7 years old is when the challenges kind of began, where I was mainstreamed into this regular school, and there was no one other student who was blind, and the teachers did not know how to work with a blind student. There was just no knowledge, and I think I was not prepared at that age to be able to explain to people that, oh yeah, I work differently, or I need content in different formats, or I cannot just read the board in the classroom. And so I remember the first couple days were extremely challenging. I wouldn't talk to anyone. I would be super hesitant. But that's kind of where my parents came in. And I think they gave me this, they said this one thing to me that has been like the mantra of my life ever since. And they were like, no matter what happens, you've got to be involved in everything that your peers are going to do. And this includes even the most visual of experiences and activities. And so, for example, when other students would be coloring and painting in a painting class, my mom would not let me just sit there and be like, hey, yeah, I can't do it because I'm blind, and so I'm just going to sit in one corner and just kind of like, observe my other peers do their own thing. The idea was, how can we adapt? How can we do things differently? How can we innovate to try and see how I can be participating in some capacity in those visual classes as well? And so what she would do, for example, in that case, was she would stick like wool or thread in the outline, and then I would feel it and I would color inside it. So I would still basically get a perspective on, okay, well, what colors are various objects in the world? Just the spatial understanding. She would often, bring in these objects and give me like an intuition of, okay, what is a circle? What is a triangle? And then what is a cylinder? What is a cone? And I think that information from a very young age was super useful for me later on to really understand how the world works, how visual the world works, because I still had to, figure that out. I still had to very much understand that. And more importantly, I had to develop this mindset that there will be challenges, there will be hurdles, there will be times when things will be visual and I will not be able to access it on an equal basis as my peers, but I don't have to give up. I have to figure out alternative ways with my parents, with my teachers, with my friends, with the community, and really make everything work, including, I still remember this, going to a dance class and figuring that out. And I can tell you, I am terrible. I was terrible. I still am terrible at dancing, but yeah, I had to do that. So it was a very interesting journey. Challenges here and there, but overall, I think the attitude that my parents instilled in me from the very beginning, the kind of mindset really helped me through and have like a very quote unquote a normal childhood.
Right, and the mindset is that while you might face some challenges in life, it is the creativity and the persistence and the resilience that you demonstrate in the face of those challenges that decides whether or not you're able to overcome them. But Kartik, I also heard you say that your mother was a really important role model in your life, and that she helped to make sure that you had access to opportunities despite the fact that you were blind. But I do want to talk a little bit about how you found your way into science, because I think some of the people watching might think of science and STEM as a more kind of complicated topic, and one that someone who is blind might have some challenges in terms of and getting into it. So can you talk to us a little bit about how you found your way to science and some of the barriers that you faced along the way?
Yeah, so it actually all started when I was in the second grade, and I would see my siblings work on a computer and play games and listen to music and do all that kind of stuff. And obviously, I wasn't able to do any of that because it was all visual. And that was the time when I would think to myself, "Hey, would I ever be able to use this thing? It's such a barrier, and they can access whatever information is available." But things really changed for me when I learned about screen readers. So screen readers are essentially a software that can read out whatever is there on your computer screen. So, if you're in the desktop, it's going to read out every single icon on the desktop. If you're in the web browser, it's actually going to read out everything in the web browser. And so I was introduced to that when I was around 7 or 8, and that kind of changed my life. And now here I was, I could do everything. I could learn, I could typeset, my assignments by myself. I could do my homework by myself, do all of that by myself, but also enjoy myself. Entertainment was key, and so at that age, I could play games, meet other people around the world, and of course, just get a lot of information from the web. So that's kind of like where my interest in technology started developing, and then slowly I started understanding and learning more about programming because I was very intrigued about how someone was able to make the screen reader that changed my life and the lives of countless other people who were blind. And that was also the time when my school was introducing very basic programming and logical thinking in the form of, I don't know if you remember this, back in those days you used to have Logo, where you used to have like, you would basically move around and the turtle and, visualize stuff. And that's kind of like how you started learning about programming. And that's kind of like how it all started for me as well. I started participating in computer quizzes, web development, and I would actually sometimes, even miss the classes that I didn't care about and go in a library and read more about things like ethical hacking and explore how technology works and stuff like that. So definitely by the time that I was 15 or so, I was pretty confident what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And I knew that it had to be science, it had to be technology. But at that time, when I was in the 10th grade, I learned that the Central Board of Education in India at that time did not allow blind students to pursue sciences in the 11th and 12th grades. And that was a prerequisite for pursuing any computer science-based, tech-based engineering course in the country. And so here I was, very confident about my choice, having developed this interest in computer science for over the years, being told that I couldn't do it just because I was blind. And that was very difficult. Some of the closest mentors that I had told me, "Hey, you're smart, just go do law, do like civil services, do anything else but computer science." And I was like, that's what I don't want to do. My interest in computer science, just because I happen to be blind, why should I have to change what I'm interested in and study something that I'm not very passionate about? And so I decided to challenge the status quo at that time. It was very hard. I had to send in like a bunch of letters to the chairman of the board, had to do personal demonstrations. But I think, again, technology came to my rescue, and I was able to convince the chairman, using the technology, of the abilities of people who are blind and visually impaired more broadly, and was able to kind of help him understand how it would be possible, how technology has empowered me to not only think about things that are otherwise visual, but also represent a lot of that visual content in ways that others could understand. And so, once I was able to basically help him and address all the different concerns that he had, that's kind of like when they allowed and they issued this notification that now allows all blind students across India to pursue whatever classes they want, whatever subjects they want, and that kind of paved the way for me to pursue sciences, and that's kind of like how my journey started.
Kartik, I love that. And at risk of getting in trouble by Jeff, I just want to say rules are meant to be broken. And a rule that says people who are blind can't do science, that sounds exactly like the kind of rule that should be broken. We're running low on time. I know Jeff is getting mad at me, but I did just want to provide an opportunity for you to share any last pieces of advice that you have for some of the young people watching, especially those who might also be different or have a disability and are concerned.
Yeah, I think there are three main things that I want to quickly talk about. One of them is for everyone to be just open, and I think open to diversity, open to different experiences, challenge your the stereotypes that you might have, and I think it's important to do that from a very young age. And so when you meet someone who might have a disability or who might be different than you in any way, I think take that as a learning opportunity, especially for children and for youth. I think that's really important, and that's the only way that we can develop for everyone. That I think is so important today, that we all need to just develop for everyone. We need to make sure that we're accounting for everyone. The second thing is, don't be afraid of challenges. Challenges are probably the best sources of innovation in my view. The only reason I was able to innovate and develop software to help other people and develop my skills, even as a technologist today, for my day job, is because I innovated under very difficult constraints. I had to figure out how to visualize a graph when I did not have any resource in the world, and so don't be afraid of them. Use challenges as a way to innovate, as a way to really try and figure out what can be done. And I think that is what's going to make you even more creative. And the last thing that I wanted to talk about is sometimes things just will not go the way you plan, but that's okay, because oftentimes I think those are the opportunities that really give a direction to your life, really give your life a vision, which is what happened for me. I couldn't get into the Indian tech schools, and then the challenges that I face as a student with a disability back home are the challenges that inspire me every single day at my job to really go and innovate and make sure that no other student with disability around the world has to face the same challenges that I once did. And so that kind of, for example, has given a meaning to my life. And so don't be despaired. Don't get afraid if things don't work out. Again, use it as a way to innovate, and know that there will be something that you can do given those challenges that will give your life a meaning, a direction, and take that and move forward and progress. That is kind of what my message would be.
Stay positive. Look to the future and be confident in yourself. Thank you, Kartik, so much for joining us today and for sharing your story of overcoming some of the physical challenges that you faced is inspiring. But I just want to point out, not unique. Every day, thousands of young people, and maybe even some who are watching, overcome significant challenges in their pursuit of safety and happiness. And I want everyone watching who might be along those lines to know that they're heroes, each in your own right. So thank you very much. And Jeff, I will pass it back off to you.
Thank you very much for that, Andrew, Kartik. I thought it was quite inspiring, actually. And I would never tell you if Andrew's running late. Don't worry about that, of course. And the rule breaking, well, we'll see how that goes on that side of it. But I think the drive behind the message there was quite inspiring, because there are barriers there that we come across. And I felt when Kartik was talking, the energy, the drive, the intensity, that passion to make it mean something, to make a difference, and to drive on. And I think the message you shared there is so powerful, and actually will address people in different ways. So we know you're absolutely right. Somebody could have a small challenge, could be a significant challenge, could be a worry, it could be anything. And there are people out there that have disabilities and challenges too. And to see someone like that striding ahead, I felt quite empowered and emboldened by that. So both of you, thank you very much for the contribution. That was absolutely fantastic. I'll make it your dancing or fitness later on, and we'll see how it goes. Okay, so get yourself ready for that and warmed up. Let's look now to our partners over at the Smithsonian Science Education Centre, and to one of our great friends here, which is Carol O'Donnell. Carol, how are you today, and how are things?
Good. How are you?
Oh, really great. I know that around the world we're all working hard, sharing the message here, getting it across, and you've been a really key part of that. So I'd love for now to take over now and lead your part of the session. And you've got some amazing guests for us to share some really important things as well. And I hope you're really well over there in America as well.
Yeah, thanks so much. And thank you again, always, Mr. Shah, for inviting us to be a part of this very important event. So hi, everyone. It's so good to be with you today. My name is Carol O'Donnell, and I'm the director or the head of the Smithsonian Science Education Center, and I work in Washington, D.C. in the United States. And I'm also an educator, a teacher, and I've been a teacher since 1983, and that's 37 years of being, with students in classrooms. My colleague Logan, who's joining us today, she's also an educator, And she's an author, so someone who writes words on a page, and those books turn into amazing opportunities for kids all over the world. So Logan learned at a very early age that the only thing that she liked better than science was talking to people about science. And she spent the last 20 years pursuing that passion. Logan's worked at museums, aquariums, wildlife refuge, penguin colonies, and in the classroom with students just like you. So today, Logan's going to talk with you about the Smithsonian Science for Global Goals project, for which Logan is an author. So the Smithsonian, along with the Inter-Academy Partnership, has pulled together the best scientists, physicians, and medical experts from around the world to work with each of us to better understand and help you understand food and how to ensure good nutrition for all. So Logan's going to introduce you to one of the many questions that we've had from students like you, your age, about food and nutrition. And she's going to share with you an example of an activity that you can do at home to discover the answer to the question about how do you ensure good nutrition for all. Logan?
Carol, thanks for the great introduction. I'm going to start sharing some slides. We should be live now. So we're going to just talk a little bit about how the food that you eat is related to your health and how you can take part in noticing that relationship. And like Carol said, we're going to use part of our Global Goals module on food to help that conversation. So first I want to ask you, all of the students who are on the call, and you can feel free to put your answer in the chat, turn to someone in your household, or just think about this to yourself. Why is it so important to know what we eat? So food contains nutrients, and those nutrients are what help you grow. They help you be well and stay well. And it's important to know what you're eating so that you can make sure you're getting the nutrients that you need. You as students are doing a lot of growing right now. And so one of the nutrients that's really important for you is calcium. You probably have heard of calcium helping you with strong bones. It helps you develop strong teeth, but it's also really important for muscle contractions or muscle movement. And it's very important for heart health. It helps your heart to beat. So you want to make sure that you're getting calcium, and you can find that in yogurt, milk, and cheese, but you can also find it in things like bok choy and other dark leafy greens like kale. So it's really important to know the nutrients that you need and where you could find them. So scientists also participate in this practice of thinking about nutrients and what foods go into a body. And at the Smithsonian National Zoo and at the Conservation Biology Institute, there are special scientists that do just that. They're called zoo nutritionists. You can see one of our zoo nutritionists featured here, and he has page after page after page of what's called a diet record, which means it's a list of the foods that are important for different animals to eat. In fact, this was one of my first jobs. When I was 14 years old, I started working at a science museum, and I would come in early in the morning and assemble all the foods that were necessary for the turtles and the toucans and the electric eels and the sharks. So if you're at the National Zoo and you're working with our prehensile-tailed porcupine, watermelon is going to be on the menu. If you're working with the poison dart frogs, you're going to need to assemble crickets, fruit flies, and some kinds of beetles. And if you're working with the Grand Cayman iguana, I actually have a copy of that diet record. And you can see in the top left corner, it's the name of the animal. So the zoo nutritionist knows which animal am I working with. And then you'll see a list at the bottom left-hand corner of the image that lists the types of food that need to be included in that diet. So let's take a look at this. Mixed greens. That's something that you and I might actually eat. Iguana maintenance diet, probably not. Any of you who have pets at home, if you buy a commercial pet food, this is like that. It's just for iguanas. Mixed vegetables, we eat that too. Sweet potato, and then squash. You'll also notice some numbers on the right side of the image, on the lower right side. So 120 grams, 20 grams, 10 grams. What does that mean? Well, those amounts are really important. Why is that important? So we've got the list and we've got the amount, we've got this diet record. How does that help our zoo nutritionists? Well, it's really important for the animals to get the nutrients that they need when they need them. So for example, you saw on the previous slide, this is for the breeding season, and you'll notice the iguanas are only eating Monday, Wednesday, Friday. That's because during the breeding season, they're not that interested in food. And so the amount of food goes down, whereas in the non-breeding season, they're feeding them every single day. When I used to work with penguins, during the penguin breeding season, we made sure to give them extra food, and the female penguins got extra calcium. That was because they're laying eggs, and they need that calcium to create eggs with strong, healthy shells. This is also a practice that you can engage in. So keeping track of the foods that you eat can be really helpful for you, and there are lots of ways to do that. A photographer named Greg Segal decided to do this through photography, and he took photographs of students from around the world, posed next to all the foods that they ate over a 7-day period. So Beryl in Malaysia is pictured here with all the foods she ate in a week. She especially likes cake, porridge, spaghetti with carbonara, and then she and her parents grow bok choy and spinach on their balcony. Frank from Senegal is pictured with all of his favorite foods. And as you can probably tell from the photo, Frank loves everything, but he especially likes fish, and he likes to eat the nuts that grow on the tree outside of his house. So I'd like to encourage you to stop and think about, what kind of foods do you like to eat? And what do you tend to eat week to week? And you can write your answers in the chat. You can turn to somebody at home and answer there, or just think about this to yourself. So just like those students in the photographs, you can create your own food journal. Again, this is thinking about, what kind of nutrients are coming in? What kind of nutrients do I need? And noticing what you're eating over a period of time. It could be a couple days, it could be a week, it could be longer. And there are so many ways to keep track of this. You could take photographs, like this person has done here. You could write it down. You could tell someone about it. You could use emojis or some other digital representation, but it's just important to start noticing what you're eating. So after that period of time, whether it's a day or a week or longer, stop and look back at your record and think about what you notice. Are there any patterns? Do you eat a lot of fruits and vegetables? What's your favorite food? Do you eat that favorite food every day, or is it only on special occasions? And think about the nutrients that you might need as a young growing person. Are you tending to choose foods that help you get those nutrients, to help your body grow, to be healthy and stay healthy? But as you're looking at your record, it's important to remember we're in the middle of a global pandemic, and not everybody is able to access the food that they want in a way that's safe right now. And even in normal times, we can't always get the foods that we need or that we want. And that's okay. It's important when you're looking at this record to not feel badly about things that are outside of your control. But if you are in the position to help others, be a good global citizen and think about how to help people get access to the nutrients that they need. And if you want a challenge, you can try our game, Pick Your Plate, the Global Guide to Nutrition. The link is going to be provided in the chat. This game helps you do sort of like a virtual world tour of nutrition. And you can choose a country to go to, like Benin or Finland or Australia. And you basically try to stay on budget, choose the nutrients that are going to create a balanced meal, and pick foods that you think will work for that balance. Some countries are a lot harder than others, so I'm excited to see how you do. And if you have any questions about anything that we've talked about today, you can always reach out to us. Carol's email address is listed right there, and mine is too. And I'm always happy to answer any of your questions that you have about putting nutrients in your body that help you grow, to be well and stay well. Carol, I'll pass it back to you.
Thanks so much, Logan. That was great. And I cannot wait to play Pick Your Plate. So I put the Pick Your Plate link in the chat box in case any of the students want to play it. It's fun. It's hard to get a gold medal or even a bronze, but when you do, you feel really good about knowing the nutritional guidelines of all of these countries around the world. So I do hope that you'll try these activities, and I certainly do hope that you'll keep track of the foods that you eat so that you better understand whether you're balancing your nutritional intake based on your weeks-long kind of investigation of the foods that you are consuming. So, you know, as our good friend, Dr. Swaminathan, who's the chief scientist at the World Health Organization, would say, scientists and teachers and authors like Logan can tell you the answers to questions that you might have about food and nutrition, but the best way to learn this is by also doing this and discovering it for yourself. So now I'm really excited. I want to also introduce you to our dear new friend, Dr. Panagis Galiatsatos. So Dr. Galiatsatos is a medical doctor and a medical health specialist. He's also an assistant professor, so he is also a teacher at the Johns Hopkins School of Medicine in Baltimore, Maryland, which is in the United States. He founded something that we are so appreciative of. It's called Medicine for the Greater Good. And it's a novel medical initiative that's impacting over 10,000 people who live in Baltimore City. And it's looking at their health and their wellness, while at the same time trying to create physician citizens. He also directs the Tobacco Treatment Clinic at Johns Hopkins and has published over 40 research articles with a focus on health equity, community engagement, and the impact of health outcomes. His book, Building Health Communities, has been described as a book that is literally has the potential to save lives. He also has a TED Talk that discusses the need for healthcare to engage with the local community for health equitable outcomes. During the pandemic, which we're all experiencing, Dr. Galiatsatos and colleagues coordinated community engagement to ensure that all populations are able to access COVID-19 updates and resources in an effort to assure compliance with public health requests, whether it's wearing a mask, physically distancing. He cares deeply about helping to protect you and others from COVID-19. Welcome, Dr. G.
Thank you so much. When I was given this opportunity to join you all, to be invited into your own communities, wherever you may be in this world, I thought about long and hard how to best introduce myself and to continue motivating you all to be the next global citizens to really change this world. And so I'm going to just talk about what I know best, which is myself, but to recognize that whenever you get asked what you want to be when you grow up, you don't have to look too hard. You have to look at your own personal story, your own personal narrative, and how that's influenced you to become the person you are today. And whether you want to pursue health through being a doctor or pursue health through being an engineer, as we heard from our earlier colleague with technology, health will always be important. And I want to stress that because you might say, well, that's not surprising hearing health from a doctor. But please understand, as a physician, health oftentimes for us is more synonymous with the science of health, but specifically medicine, where we look at pathology, disease, and so forth. But health is so holistic. It takes into account what you eat, takes into account where you live, takes into account your day-to-day activities, your hobbies, and so forth. Really just takes into account your own identity. And so as Ms. Carol mentioned earlier, I helped create an initiative called Medicine for the Greater Good. And MGG, the initials, the purpose of that initiative was to take doctors of the 21st century and let them understand that medicine and its impact in health, on health, cannot be maximized, cannot reach its full potential within the confines of a hospital wall. If we are truly dedicated to making our communities healthier, we can't just sit in the hospital. We have to go outside of it. We have to go into someone's community. We have to maybe not walk in their shoes, but walk next to them and enjoy that understanding of what it means to live in their neighborhood and in their community. And only then can we help create equitable plans that the patients can learn in order to best promote health for themselves. And I say this because to me, that didn't seem like a revolutionary idea, even though others have said that. To me, it just meant going back to my roots, understanding where I grew up, understanding how community, how your neighborhood can always help fulfill whatever gaps an individual has. We are so much stronger together than we are individually. And so if you want to recognize to promote health in any context, I strongly encourage doing it unified, doing it as one, doing it as a group, because only then can you hit the maximal potential of yourselves and of your community in order to promote health and wellness and to prevent disease. And that concept is so much true in today with COVID-19. And the last closing comment I'll make is, as you heard earlier, we are engaged with the community during COVID-19. And one of our outcomes has been going into the schools and talking to the children about how you all can play a role in ending this pandemic. And sometimes I get a child snickering at that, but it's true, right? We talk about how it spreads. And so if we take the behaviors of how it spreads and undo that, right? Physical distancing and so forth and hand hygiene, we could all stop this pandemic today.
Wow, I think I've got to say that Dr. Dr. Galiatsatos, that was really inspiring, okay? So what I liked on that side of it, and before we get to the question side of it, you talked about one point about being in the community, getting a feel for it, being there. And I think it's so true, because sometimes in this world, we look sometimes from a telescope far away at a situation, and we look at our ideas, our calculations, our spreadsheets, and we make decisions that are not about the community we're living in, not feeling how it works as well. So I think that was quite interesting and quite transformative in terms of the way of seeing things. And sometimes we are too distant. We don't understand how it is on the ground, how that community works, and how to get in there. And I think the idea of doctors on the ground there seeing what's happening a stone's throw from your house was truly inspiring as well. Now, having a doctor here ready for us, and we're going to put some questions to you about some health questions to see how they go. We're going to go around the world. So, and I think that our first question coming in is from Uganda and from Catherine in Uganda. Let's see there.
Galiatsatos. My name is Catherine Namara from Uganda. Considering the future of medicine and how dynamic it is, how would you say the role of nutrition can be modified to harness its benefits and enhance its role in promoting good health?
That's a fantastic question of how nutrition can play a role in promoting health. So the simple and maybe to some extent obvious answer is that good nutrition 100% can help us achieve the equity that we all deserve in regards to our own health. We saw those pictures earlier from the Smithsonian, these young children eating what, my first glance of it, yes, diverse diets, but a well-balanced diet. And in my line of work, we often emphasize how so much of the vitamins and minerals people take in are immediately used by the body's immune system, for instance, right? Like all the vitamins you take in, all the minerals, your immune system takes them on and gets energized from it. So meaning if you do get an infection, you'll be able to combat it so much more effectively. Yes, you may still get a fever or a hiccup here and there, but I promise you, you won't be suffering dire consequences. So nutrition is pivotal. And I say this because in 2020, right, the pandemics that existed before COVID-19 were pandemics of diseases that we call non-communicable, meaning I can't pass it on to you. These are diseases like diabetes or high blood pressure. Those are very common, and we strongly have recognized that they are linked to not just your community, not just your neighborhood status, but also the foods you take in. And so nutrition, a well-balanced meal, can help prevent the prior pandemics that we had in this world, such as diabetes and high blood pressure. And not only that, they can help you achieve your best, right? From cognition, right, to the way you think, and to the way you promote your own health and so forth. So I'm a firm believer, actually, when we go out into the communities, discussions of food is easily the top choice, the top conversation that everyone has, and we discuss how we can all benefit one another with more diverse, nutritious diets. So that's a fantastic question that I think transcends every country and every culture.
Really important question that to be answered. Thank you very much for behind that side of it. So we're going to head out now to a beautiful place now in Bermuda. And we've got a question for you. This is an interesting question. I think it's possibly a hard question. So let's see if we can get across to Bermuda and see what they're trying to say to you.
Hello, my name is Sam, and I go to Chatmore British International School in Bermuda, where I'm head boy. My question today is, what are the prospects of herd immunity as it relates to the coronavirus?
Oh, it's a great question. So herd immunity implies that enough people in a population have gotten an infection where we have a memory to it, where we can kind of hold off, meaning whenever we get a new infection and our body's immune system has to recognize it for the first time, oftentimes that delay in recognition allows the virus or the infection to just kind of grab one cell to the next, replicate, and ultimately cause a disease. And when you have an immunity, a prior memory to it, the second that virus comes in there, the body's prepared, everyone's on defense, the virus gets taken care of, either without ever developing symptoms or maybe some mild symptoms. Now, in order to have this type of herd immunity, every infection, we kind of take into account, well, how does it spread? And this one spreads through the air. And how contagious is it and its infectious period? And we know SARS-CoV-2 can be infectious for anywhere from 2 weeks to up to 30 days. Taking all these variables into account, we create a number called the reproduction number that tells us how many people need to achieve herd immunity in order for this pandemic to be somewhat behind us. And that number is somewhere between 60 to 80%. That is very high when we look at this infection causing a pandemic, right? 6 billion people throughout the world susceptible to this. So herd immunity of 60-80% of 6 billion people, unfortunately, it's going to be a lot of people and a lot of lives that could have been prevented from being lost. So that's why, to some extent, pursuing herd immunity, we know it's especially with a virus that has a mortality rate of about 3 to 5% and a morbidity rate, meaning causing rather severe illness in 1 out of 6, is not the approach we should take when we have the ability to have science help us. One way to gain herd immunity without having to go through a bad disease like COVID-19 is a vaccine. And that's what we're in a race for at the moment, right? Where you are seeing the pace of science and the pace of intellectual thought really help promoting the next level of combating Mother Nature's pandemic. So herd immunity, we want to achieve it, don't get me wrong, but we want to achieve it without losing any lives. And the best way to do that is a vaccine. And that means vaccinating about 60 to 80% of the world's populations. So that's what we're trying to strive for. Trying to achieve it another way, just naturally, that means many lives will be lost, and we're nowhere close to that. I think the last numbers are about 25 million people with with SARS-CoV-2 infections throughout the world. So if we're relying on just herd immunity to happen naturally, we are not even a 5% there. So we have a long ways to go. But for humans, we have science. We can get there in a more efficient and ethical way through the vaccine.
Dr. G, thank you very much. It's a great answer, that side of it. So I've got to thank you on behalf of the Global Classroom for being so honest in your answers, so truthful about that. And I've got to go back to your message there about being real, being connected. And we are here part of one global community in the Global Classroom. We have people around the world listening in, and I'm sure they'll recognize that message you put out there and for answering the questions as well. So a huge thank you. I wish you all the best in the pandemic in your area and your work as well. So thank you very much for taking part in today's classroom.
Thank you.
Now, we've talked about health, we've talked about fitness, about medicine, we talked about what I should eat, what I shouldn't eat. We've addressed overcoming difficulties, when you can't see something, how to go about that. Let's get to the section now that Andrew Brennan was really looking forward to, and let's get our bodies moving, let's get healthy, let's get fit, and let's get working. So we have some friends over at Neou Fitness, and they have a platform where they're working on thousands of fitness classes, streaming out, making sure when they're even got sort of lockdown and pandemic, we can all use our bodies to stay fit and to stay healthy and to stay really, really well. And I'm really appreciative here that we've got one of their guests. Blake is working with us now, and she's going to join us and guide us through what it means for her to stay fit and to stay healthy, and how she is generally staying well. And actually, now's the time to create some space in your area so you can move about. I'll probably get my chair out of the way in a second, and I'll probably roll out a yoga mat behind me. And we'll see if we can connect now to Neou, the team over there, and see what Blake is doing. So Blake, can you hear us at all yet? Can we connect into you? And how are you doing? I can see a screen coming up.
Hi, I'm doing very well. Thank you so much for having me. Guys, I'm super excited to be talking to you all today about movement, moving our bodies, feeling good, feeling strong. So I figured I'd give you a quick little background on me. My name is Blake. I grew up doing all kinds of sports, but for the most part it was gymnastics and cheerleading for 16 years. I then started teaching gymnastics for 11 years, and for the past 4 years I've been teaching both adults and children on the Neou app how to work out, stay active, be healthy and fit, and it has truly just been so much fun. I did grow up trying to play kind of all sports, and I could never stick with all of them because I didn't find them fun. And so that's sort of the first thing that I want to talk to you guys about. When it comes to fitness, we have to bring the fun into it. Fun and fitness are meant to go together. That's the only way that you're gonna keep doing it, keep moving, and really enjoy what you're doing. If you're not having fun, it's going to feel like a chore. And I mean, I know how I felt growing up doing chores. I'm sure you guys are like, ugh, chores, they're the worst. So we don't want working out and being active to feel like that either. So you've got to find what works for you. Is it playing a sport? Is it just riding your bike outside? Is it swimming? Is it jumping rope, running? Is it playing games? Is it hopscotch? Honestly, there are so many things to choose from, and it's really just up to you to explore, try different things, and find what is like, oh my gosh, I'm having so much fun while I'm doing this that I don't even realize that I'm working hard. Work and play kind of go hand in hand. So find what is fun and stick with it, and I promise that will keep you moving. The second thing I wanted to talk to you guys about today is fitness with your friends and family. Sometimes working out alone and playing sports alone, it's not as fun. So I want you guys to challenge your friends, challenge your family, see if you can grab somebody to go outside and set a 1-minute timer and see who can do the most burpees in a minute. See if you set another minute timer, who can do the most squats, and put a little bit of competition in there with your friends and family. And if you guys want to sort of make a game out of it, say, if I do the most burpees in a minute, then you have to clean my room, and if you do the most burpees, then I have to clean my room. Whatever it is, find something where the stakes are a little bit higher, and that just is going to make it even more fun. And the last thing I want to talk to you guys about before we really start moving, because this classroom is all about the body and movement, so I'm not just going to sit here and talk to you guys. I'm going to get you up on your feet and get you moving. So the last thing is to try to get outside and simplify. Moving your body and being active doesn't have to be so complicated. Maybe you go outside and you just go on a walk. You go on a walk and you see what you can find in nature. Maybe it's going outside and sort of just walking to a bench and then stepping up and down off the bench a bunch of times. Getting outside and getting fresh air and moving your body at the same time is like the recipe for success and to just feel so good. A lot of us are sitting on our computers a lot more often than we're used to. With the craziness of the world, that it's even now more important to get outside when you can. And nature just, it's a game changer. It really is. So the more you're inside, try to go outside just as much, especially now with the situation that we're all in. So get outside, make it simple, have fun while you're doing it, and that's going to keep you going. You're going to feel so strong. So I am going to get you moving, like I said. So we're just going to do some simple mobility, moving our bodies. It's going to feel great, especially if you're sitting down a lot. So all you need is yourself and some space around you. I'm going to move my camera so that you guys can see me. And then we're going to get right into it. So let's go ahead, find yourselves some nice big space out in front of you. We're going to reach down for our toes, leaving our hips up super high in the air. And we're going to walk our hands out into the top of a push-up position. Squeeze your booty. And then you're going to walk those hands back in and stand up nice and tall. We can call this like we walk the dog, even though we're walking ourselves. Walk it out, walk those hands back in, and stand up tall. If you're having a hard time keeping those legs straight, then you can bend them a little bit, especially if there are any grown-ups at home that are doing this as well. As we get older, we tend to lose a little bit of flexibility. So it's even more important to challenge your grown-ups to do this with you. They'll feel better for it. We're gonna go for just one more, and this time we're gonna stop in that top of a push-up position, and I want you to step your left foot forward to the outside of your left hand for a nice tall lunge. From there, can you lower your back knee to touch the ground and feel that nice big stretch in your hips? Can you lift your knee back up and straighten out that back leg? And then from there, we're gonna reach our left hand, so same side of that foot that just stepped forward, and we're gonna reach it up to the sky. You can wave to the clouds or the sun, whatever's above you. Maybe it's just the ceiling. And then go ahead and bring that hand back down. And we're going to switch sides. So step that left foot back, step the right foot forward. And we're going to touch the back knee to the ground, same as we did before. Just for a moment. And then lift that knee back up. Go ahead and reach the right arm up to the ceiling. You can wave it. And bring that hand back down. Let's go ahead and step the right foot back behind us. And this time, instead of walking back, we're going to lower our hips down to the ground, untuck your toes, and we're going to be in a nice seal stretch. If you've ever been to the beach and seen what a seal looks like, they sit just like this. And you feel that nice big stretch in your back. You can look up to the ceiling or the sky. And then we're going to go ahead and sit back onto the heels of our feet. Stretch our arms all the way forward. Big, big stretch. And let's go ahead and walk our hands forward just a few steps. And I'm going to challenge you guys to see if you can get your chest to touch the ground. I bet you kids at home are able to do it, and grown-ups, I don't know. We'll see. Lower down. This is a really good one for all of us that are doing our virtual learning right now. Again, sitting on the computer, this one opens up our back and our chest. Feels so good. And then go ahead and walk those hands back so that you're sitting all the way back onto those heels again. Take one big breath, fill up your belly. And then go ahead and lift the hips back up. Let's come into a tabletop position. It's like a baby about to crawl. And from there, we're going to circle our knee. So we're going to bring one knee up and around and just make a big, big circle. It doesn't matter what direction you go in because we are going to do both. But how straight can you keep your arms? Go ahead and change direction. Let's see how big of a circle you can go in the other way. And then go ahead and switch sides. So we're going to circle the other knee with super strong arms. We're going to keep that belly pulled in tight. So right now what we're doing is we're working out our joints. We're working on our hip joint right now. Go ahead and change direction. So a lot of the times when we go on a run or a walk, we're working on our heart and our lungs. When we do work like this, we're working on the joints that support our body and our muscles, and it feels so good. So go ahead and come back into that neutral position. And the last few ones, go ahead and tuck your chin to your chest, round your back, make a nice cat position like a scared cat, and then you can lower the belly down, look forward, and then again tuck the chin, really round the back, arch once more, And then go ahead and tuck your toes back behind you. Lift the knees up off the ground. Press back into a strong downward dog. You can pedal out the feet a few times. You're gonna walk the feet forward to meet the hands. We're in that nice bent over position again. And then you can stand up and you are done. Guys, awesome, awesome job. Keep moving your bodies, keep having fun. Back to Jeff at Skatesburg Hall.
Hey Blake, I did do it honestly. I went off camera, I got my mat out, I was doing my exercises, at least in some way as well. You made it look so easy, but actually incredibly important. And thank you for sharing that, because we know that we've now covered through over difficulties, nutrition, health, movement for the body, all important for our overall well-being, and exceptionally important too. A huge thank you to the team over at Neou and your contributions over there as well. And I got some great exercises to share with children around the world and what you've done. So where do we go next? So we've covered sort of the physical side, we've covered the nutrition side. Let's look at something that actually we do every day, all the day, throughout the night, and perhaps we don't even think about it sometimes. We sit here, we inhale, we exhale, but are we doing it the right kind of way or the wrong kind of way? And how do we explore that? My next guest is called James Nestor. Now, James has written for Outside, Scientific American, The Atlantic, Dwell, The New York Times, and many more publications. Now, his latest book, which I actually have a copy of over here as well, and I've been through that. Honestly, scanned it through. It's a good read. It's an exciting read. It's an accessible read as well. It talks about a really interesting approach of going through history, different aspects on here about breath, how we think about it, how we do it. This book came out in May 2020, and it's published by, I think it's Riverhead and Penguin Random House. And it really was an instant success, a New York Times bestseller. And James, you meet in a second, has appeared on dozens of programs, more so recently as well on there, including, I think, ABC's Nightline, at CBS Morning News, NPR, lives and breathes in San Francisco, I believe, beautiful place to be. And James, if you're there, how are you? How are things?
Doing very well. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's great to have you here. And I've got to say, the book is a great read, okay? And actually, we've got children around the world right now, and we're trying to think to ourselves, how are we going to explain this and talk about it, which is extremely important. And I thought we'd actually probably kick off by trying to get somebody actually live with you in the Global Classroom now to perhaps ask a question of what their thoughts were as well. And this is the point where we cross our fingers and hope we can connect to somebody and get it right. So I know that our first question is coming from, I think it's Lily. And Lily is in the classroom somewhere, and Lily's going to try and turn her camera on a second and a microphone on, and see if we can get through to her. Lily, I can see your picture coming up. She's wonderful. If your microphone's unmuted. Lily, how are you tonight? You okay?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Great. Well, we've got James here for you, okay? And I know you had a question to ask him. So let's kick off first of all with your question, and it might then invite James to talk a bit about his book as well, where it came from. Off you go.
What led you to develop the breathing technique, and how did it make you feel?
Okay, Lily, thanks for that.
It's a great question. So I did not develop any breathing techniques. As a journalist, I went out into the field and talked with experts, breathing therapists, people who have been studying breathing for decades and decades. And I spent several years collecting what we know about the new science of breathing. And what I learned is that so many of us are breathing improperly. Yes, you can breathe inadequately. You can breathe improperly, just like how you can eat the wrong foods or not exercise enough. And how we breathe affects us in so many ways. It affects how we think. It affects how we move. It can even affect our growth. How you breathe can affect your growth, which is amazing stuff. So it turns out that our ancestors were likely breathing a lot better than we are today. And I know that seems crazy, because how can we prove that? We can't take an ancient ancestor and put them into a lab, but we can look at their skeletons. And by looking at their skeletons, by looking at their jaw structure, we can see that their airways were much more wide than ours are now. If you think about the modern population, most of us have crooked teeth. We have crooked teeth because our mouths have grown so small. And with a mouth that's too small, you have a smaller airway, which leads to a lot of breathing problems. So I know that wasn't the exact answer you were looking for, But there are as many different ways to breathe as there are foods to eat. And we can use these different ways to breathe to really energize our body or put ourselves to sleep or focus. There's so many things we can do with just our breath.
James, thanks for answering that question, certainly. And you talked a bit about what you've researched on there. Just give us a bit of insight now to the people who's watching on where did it come from to suddenly look at breathing as an idea? It's something we don't even think about most of our times. So I'm thinking here, I'm now more aware suddenly by what you said of how I'm breathing, whereas a second ago I wasn't. So what triggered it off for you in terms of your journey?
Well, a lot of my friends, when I told them I was going to go write a book about breathing, they thought, this is the stupidest book in the world. We all breathe. I'm breathing now. You're breathing. Everyone who is alive is breathing. What do we really need to know about it? But it wasn't really until I showed them what free divers were able to do that they got interested. And this was really my jumping off point as well. So free divers are these people who have trained themselves to hold their breath for 7, 8, 9 minutes at a time and dive to depths of 300 or 400 feet, 100 meters below that. So they're able to do this because they focused on this art of breathing. And what they told me was that to focus on your breathing not only allows you to dive very deep for very long in the ocean, far deeper than any scientist thought possible, but we can also use our breathing to heal ourselves, to heat ourselves up when we're cold, and to do so many other things to really improve our immune health throughout the day. And this is something a lot of people aren't talking about, even though scientists have been studying this for decades and decades.
So obviously, I'm thinking to myself right now, I know sometimes I probably breathe through my mouth. And after reading your book, I'm now a bit concerned by that. And I know that can lead to sort of snoring, sleep apnea, and the dangerous side of it as well. So looking back in terms of the ancient wisdom you looked at there, I know that things like yoga and breathing sessions techniques, we all know these things are good for you. So how did you find that connection between the breathing and the breath and the historical aspects behind it?
So every major culture had studied and appreciated breathing as an essential part of health. If you look at ancient Hindu texts, they're talking all about breathing. Yoga was never about movement. So the first yoga was about sitting, striking a pose, and breathing. So all of these movements came in the last 100 years. So the original yoga is 3,000, 4,000 years old. So all about breathing. Same thing with ancient Chinese. They used breathing, they studied breathing, they wrote 7 books on breathing. And these books are thousands of years old. So what they all seem to be saying, and what science is showing us now, is that nasal breathing is essential to health. You should not be breathing out of the mouth. And here is why. If you were to take a cross section of my head or your head or anyone's head, it would look something like this. So when we take in breath through the nose, we are pushing that breath through this maze of different structures. And as air is forced through these structures, it is heated, it is moistened, it is pressurized, and all of that air is filtered through all of these different hairs and mucus and so many different things. So by the time it enters our lungs can more efficiently extract oxygen. So this is our first line of defense. If you look at this fellow's mouth, none of those structures exist. Air just goes straight through. So you're exposing yourself to everything in your environment. And if you happen to be in a city like I am, that means pollutants, that means allergens, that means a bunch of other dust and gunk. You want to filter that air. So just breathing through your nose is really the first step to healthy breathing.
So how have we got it so wrong over time? We try and think we're an evolving society. We're a society that's progressive. We think that physically we're getting better at what we're doing. So where do we go so wrong with this sort of process then?
So when I was a kid, which was 1,000,000 years ago, I never learned that evolution wasn't about progress. I had always learned that evolution was Darwinism, survival of the fittest, natural selection. Life just keeps getting better and better and stronger and meaner. That is not true. So in any person who has studied evolution, any biologist, any anthropologist will tell you that evolution means change, and life can change for the better or for the worse. And the human species right now, at least as far as our breathing is concerned, has been changing for the worse because our faces have been growing more and more flat, our mouths have been growing more and more small, that it's hard for so many of us just to get a free breath in. And you think about it, you look at any other animal in the wild, they're breathing just fine. But humans, we have sleep apnea, we have snoring, we have asthma, we have respiratory problems that other animals don't have. And if you look at the skeletal record, there's a very good chance our ancestors did not have these problems either, because they had these huge nasal apertures. Those are the two holes that connect our noses to our throats. They had these enormous jaws, and they had these huge airways. So I don't mean to bum anyone out. The reason why I research this stuff is once you identify the problem, you can then find solutions. You can then fix it. And that's what I spent so many years in laboratories and at universities doing, is finding the best way of fixing our breathing to share in better health.
James, thank you very much. I think for those who want to read more, the book is fantastic. We haven't got time to go into it now, but I know you also say that humming is quite a good thing as well, which is fantastic to share as well. But from my point of view, from our team here, thank you very much for your time. It's been wonderful. Have a great day as well, James. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
And now we're moving on now to our next guest and our final guest, and certainly a prominent one for the Global Classroom, and one that we're incredibly proud to have here, and also to share with you the amazing work of his foundation that he has as well. And rather than me sort of talking about our next guest, first of all, in a minute, I want to share with you a video that explains a bit about what he's done and the amazing life that he's had as well. And I think we're going to cue it up now, and you're going to learn about quite a remarkable person who has a life that's absolutely extraordinary. And let's hear a bit on the video about Ben Lesser.
It's human nature to want to live. When you know your life is at stake, any minute you could be killed. You lived from minute to minute and prayed a lot and hoped that nothing will happen to you. I have dedicated my life to end this hatred. When we educate, we can prevent, and then we will ultimately prevail. This is a message to all your students. It's possible to let tragedy or trauma become a reason to stop living. But it's also possible to live through extreme circumstances and commit to a life that has meaning, a life that matters. My dear departed one, all 6 million are crying out to the world in a single word. Zachor, remember us, we were here.
That's an amazing video, a passionate one as well. I know that Ben is somebody who's been really putting his message out across the world to a whole range of people. And today we're privileged to share that with the Global Classroom, to all of you out there. He's so proactive in 2019 that Ben even engaged with BMG Sound Lab in Los Angeles and met with some of the world's leading songwriters in there to produce a song called Choose Love. And I recommend you go and find that. Go and find that on Spotify, Apple, etc., or a streaming service and listen to it, because Ben's story changes people's lives. So I'm very pleased to say, first of all, Ben, how are you, and welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Shaw.
So I've got some questions for you here, Ben, to go through, and I know you're going to spend some time after this in a seminar with some children as well. So thank you for your time, and it's a great privilege to have you here. Now, when I watched your video, it opened with saying that it's human nature to want to live. And now you endured some of the most horrific treatment and persecution. And I've read your book, and it's an amazing book. And in your book, you write about the liberation, and you describe yourself, the Jewish prisoners, as the walking dead. We could barely breathe, let alone walk and smile. And I think in a question here, I find it hard to understand, you know, how did you find the strength and will to survive that?
I don't know how I found the strength. I always had this feeling that I will survive it. Ben, I always talk to myself in a way, if you behave and do everything you're told and you do it the best you can, perhaps you'll have a chance to survive this. And as it turned out, I survived, but just barely. When I was liberated, I passed out, and I was in coma for 2 months. And I woke up in a sanitarium. Actually, it was a
monastery
cloister. The monks gave up one building to rehabilitate into a hospital. So that's where I woke up 2 months after liberation. So to answer your question, I have no idea how I survived.
Well, I mean, thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Shaw.
No, carry on, it's your will.
I think it was God's will that I survive. And I asked myself the same question. How come the whole family, out of 7 members, only I and my sister survived? Why?
Chocolate.
Why? So the answer to that is, I believe that God needed a witness, someone who can talk about the Holocaust. And I dedicated my last 25 years to do just that. I go around and talk about it to schools and colleges. I travel all over the world just to keep this world from acquiring amnesia. I'm doing my best, but I know what's coming in the future, and I know that I won't be around here forever. So who is going to pick up that important message that we did have a Holocaust? Most people don't want to believe it. And some of the people minimize it. But I was there, and I know what happened. And every word is true. Yes, it was 6 million, and it wasn't just a few, and it wasn't the fault of the Jewish people. It wasn't the fault of anyone else. It was Nazism, hatred. Hitler installed the hatred into human beings. And that hatred has to stop, because Hitler and the Nazis did not start with killing. They started with hate, propaganda, and this is what it leads to. And I have so much to tell the youngsters of today. There are so many ways that we have to stop the hatred. When you bully someone in school, that person who was bullied will never forget. He'll never forget or forgive you. And God forbid, if that person's life is not successful, he'll blame you because you bullied him. It's part of hatred that has to stop. And we don't know what this person is going to do. If you hate enough, it's easy to kill. The Nazis have showed it. How can they kill women, children, babies, throw them alive into flames, into fiery pits, which I've witnessed in Auschwitz? How is that possible? But it's all possible, I guess, if you hate enough, because the German people were highly educated people. It's not like, they didn't have the education they were cultured, educated people. And how could they do this and then go home and meet their own family and children after they killed dozens of children because they were born Jewish? That's a big crime. You can't be born to a Jewish family. If you are, you have no right to live, according to the Nazis. And that was Hitler's idea.
Ben, I think I'm listening to you right now, and I'll be honest with you, it's really powerful, the words you're speaking. I'm almost not wanting to talk to you and ask further questions. What you're saying is amazing. And you mentioned you want to try and reach people. We're doing the same thing, definitely. We want to echo your message around the world. Could you perhaps, you talk about the idea in your book called Living a Life That Matters. And, we also would advise that anyone goes to the website of zacharlearn.com to understand more about this. Would you share with us, perhaps, while you're here now, live around the world, what it was like to be in these camps that you went through, all four of them?
Take your head up. Okay, if I have a little time, I would like to tell you a little bit about my life. I don't know, Mr. Shaw, do I have enough time? Give me...
You got a few minutes, certainly, go for it.
I'll go for it. Well, I come from a wonderful family of 7. And out of the family of 7 today, only I and my sister survived. My sister Lola passed away of natural causes. She was in her mid-90s. She had a good life after the Holocaust. But we lived in Krakow in a beautiful building on a major thoroughfare, and our apartment was on the ground floor, and there was another apartment with other Jewish family in the same building. There were 6 apartments and 2 of us were Jewish. So it was early in the morning, the whole building started to shake, and I ran to the window to see what happened. I saw tanks were rolling down, and following the tanks, there were half-tracks, and every few steps, a soldier would jump out of the half-track. He would get on the sidewalk, and this is how they occupied the city, Krakow. There was no fighting. Following the half-tracks, there was the Wehrmacht, the foot soldier with their shiny black boots and their goose steps. It was quite impressionable for a 11-year-old. I wasn't even 11. I was just 1 month shy of 11. But we had no idea what to expect. I imagine my parents may have known something because Kristallnacht happened 1 year earlier. So if my parents knew something, they wouldn't tell us kids, but they did call us into the dining room, set us down at the table. He said, "Children, from this point on, there's no more misbehaving. You have to behave, you have to listen, and don't counteract or anything. You are like grown-ups from this moment on. And things started to happen, but I don't have time enough to explain all of the ordinances that they came out with, constantly making it worse and worse. And finally, there was a new ordinance that we had to leave Krakow or go into a ghetto. They gave us a choice only one time. And we decided we are going to leave Krakow. And we found a truck driver and we hired him. He was a coal truck driver hauling coal. We asked them to make the coal truck into double-decker, where there'll be coal on top, and between the coal and the chassis, there was room for 10 people to lay like sardines, which we did. And eventually he took us to the border of Czechoslovakia, and from Czechoslovakia, we had to cross the border. That wasn't so easy. It was a lot of how we can bypass the guards with their dogs and cross the border is a story in itself. And I had my little brother with me. He was about 9 years old at the time, and maybe only 8. And was in the middle of the night at 3 a.m. and finally we crossed the border. We slid down a mountain and I was holding his hand, and there was a plateau on the bottom and it was pitch black. We couldn't even see our hands. And we were now in Czechoslovakia. All of a sudden somebody gives me a pat on my back, and I almost jumped out of my skin. It's so black you can't even see your hand in front of you. Who is it? And he says, Bainish. He called me by my names that my parents and my siblings were calling me, instead of calling me Benek at that time, or Ben. So he says, I'm your mother's brother, your uncle Bela, and I'm going to take you across from here to Hungary. In Hungary, I had my older sister because my mother's side of the family came from Hungary. Anyway, a town called Munkács. And we crossed the border, we wound up in Budapest. And in Budapest, I met my sister Lola, who also, she and I both crossed. She crossed earlier. And now we took a train to Munkács. In Munkács, we found the whole family. They were very happy to see us. Anyway, to tell the whole story from this point on, they finally, the Nazis came in, and a year later, actually it was only about 5 months later from the times that we arrived to Hungary, and the Nazis just marched in like they were invited guests. And within, strange, because when they came in, they knew every Jewish person. They knew their names, they knew their education, they knew their businesses. How? We didn't have these computers in those days. IBM had punch cards that they would sell these punch cards to anyone who would pay. Now, IBM doesn't deny it, but they tell us they had no idea for what purpose they're going to use it. And this is what they told us. You're going to be relocated to Germany and take along all your valuables that you can carry, leave everything else behind. And they started to march us out. Anyway, they put us in these kettle cars and we wound up in Auschwitz. Life in Auschwitz, I can't even explain it. It would take me over an hour to tell the whole story. But all I can tell you is that Eventually, we were moved out of Auschwitz into a labor camp. It was a rock quarry where, as they dynamited the mountain and the boulders came down, it was our job with sledgehammers to break it down to manageable pieces, throw it into mining carts, run it down the hill to the grinding machines to make gravel out of it, then push it back up. It was very hard labor work. And then every day as we came home, when we came into the
I don't think you have time.
into the yard, they would line us up in rows of 5 and they would count us. One day we came home, they lined us up rows of 5 and they counted and counted and counted and they wouldn't dismiss us. And the commandant comes down with his Fräulein, his girlfriend. He says, I'm going to teach the Schweinhund a lesson so they'll never forget. He's going to teach us a lesson so we will never forget. What happened? 3 inmates escaped. And because of this, he orders his henchmen to pick out every 10th person in line to receive 25 lashes. And while they're doing this and they're counting and pulling out every 10th person, my uncle was in front of me. I can see he would be a 10. So I pushed him behind me and I took his place and I became a number 10. They put us all in the yard. They brought down bundles of hardwood stakes about 2.5 feet long, 1 by 1 inch hardwood stakes. And they also brought down a sawhorse. A sawhorse, I hope everyone knows what a sawhorse looks like. It's 2 sawhorses, you put a log of wood and you can cut it. So now you know. It's like a tripod, a triangle. And this is what he ordered us. He ordered us to tiptoe and put our knees inside the opening of the sawhorse, bend over, but your stomach cannot touch the wood, the 2x4. One man would pull your trousers and the other one was doing the hitting, and you had to count out loud. You had to count out loud. 1, 2, 3, 5. The first person came up. He, of course, by the way, the heels cannot touch the ground. You had to tiptoe, put in your knees under and bend over without touching the 2x4. It was almost impossible. The first man fell. He couldn't do it. He kept repeating himself. Finally, he fell. The commandant goes over, pulls out the revolver, and shoots him right in the head. His girlfriend walks over to him and gives him a hug and a kiss, like he just performed some kind of a heroic act. Then number 2 went up, and I was number 4. Number 2 the same way. He miscounted, and as he miscounted, he started all over again, and he kept doing it. Finally, he fell. He fell, the commandant goes over, kicks him in the face, get up, and he couldn't. He shoots him, so we have 2. Number 3 was a younger man, and after he made a few mistakes, he was yelling out, please don't kill me, have mercy on me. So as he said that, the commandant says, okay, then stand up, come over here and face me. The poor guy stood up, made a few steps, and his knees gave up, and he fell. As he fell, the commandant goes over and shoots him. We have 3 dead bodies. Ben Lesser is number 4. I was probably the youngest in the camp at that point. I was only close to 16, 15, 3/4, something like that. So I remember going up to that sawhorse and talking to myself. I says, Ben, this is it. You want to live another hour? No mistakes. You have to do exactly what you're told. I went over, I tiptoed, I put in my knee into the opening. I bent over without touching the 2x4. One man is pulling my trousers and the other one is hitting, and I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, finally 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 25. I made it. When I made it, then you can hear a pin drop in the whole camp because no one believed that anyone will survive this. Now the man who was holding my trousers tight says to me in Yiddish, "Go over and thank the commandant." I stand up, blood is running down my trousers. I'm walking over to him, I salute him, and I said, "Danke schön, Herr Kommandant." When he hears this, he puts his hand on my collar and turns me around facing the number 10s. And he says, "Now I told you it could be done. If you do it like this, Junge, if you do it like this, young one, you have nothing to worry about." While this is happening, there's a commotion at the gate. They caught those 3 inmates and they were pulling them in. Well, it's a long story, but as they were pulling them in, the commandant saw that, just like a child gets sick of a toy, he told all of us number 10 to go back into the line there, in the line, and those 3 people were hung.
Yeah, but Ben, I think these stories that you're saying there are I mean, I'm listening and I can't sort of stop listening. It's incredible. But I do know that I've got a difficult job on the time management, so bear with me. What I need to tell people right now in a second is that what we're going to do once we finish this session is put you into a seminar room where you're going to have a long time to talk as well, and we're going to post that on YouTube alongside this session. I was almost in tears when you spoke about that, because how do you go up there and stand there and do that? I can't understand it. It's so difficult to comprehend the atrocities that have gone on there, and to get the truth out there, to remember, to not have amnesia is something that we must get right for the whole world. Now, we're going to carry on this discussion in the seminar in a second and move it forward. Can I ask you a question, though, which would be, your life didn't finish in that concentration camp. It didn't end there. You went on from there to achieve an amazing family, a wonderful life, a wonderful wife that you've just celebrated an anniversary with as well, and also a successful businessman. Now, you lived through these extreme circumstances and you committed your life to one of meaning and one of purpose. Now, there are children around the world, millions of teenagers, young people, that are going to hear this now, and they'll watch the session after this. What would your message be at the final part of our session now to those people that you would give to young people directly around the world today?
Choices. Well, my message to the kids are to stop the hatred. It's very simple. You have to stop the hatred. We're all God's creations in this world. So why can't we live side by side and appreciate our differences rather than hate them? There is no room for hatred. And this is the biggest message that I have to go get through. Sure, my story is long and I have a great story to tell. How I survived, I don't know. I have no idea how I was able to survive all these years in the camps and in ghettos. But I believe that God needed a witness, and that's why I am going around to schools and colleges talking about it. But I do want to say something to you. Know that that's to the kids, that we all have choices. God gave us a mind and he gave us a right to choose. We can choose to be good, we can choose to be bad. But individuals can't always choose what happens to them. But whether it's a crisis or a calamity, people can choose to either let it ruin their lives or to learn from it and move forward. It's essential to understand the consequences of personal choices. It's possible to let tragedy or trauma become a reason to stop living. But it's also possible to live through extreme circumstances and commit to a life that has meaning, a life that matters.
Ben, that's incredibly powerful. And I must say to all the children that I work with, children in the global classroom around the world, they need to listen to that. We cannot allow hate to dominate our hearts and our minds in this situation. Now, for those of you that are watching this, we're going to be moving into a room now just with Ben to hear about his story and to carry on this conversation. We're not going to end it here. So I want to thank all of our partners for taking part in the global classroom so far, but our journey carries on. And if you're taking part in that seminar, we're going to see you in there. Our huge thanks to Smithsonian, to National Geographic, to James as well. All of our groups taking part here. And we're going to move now into a seminar with Ben to understand further about his journey and make sure that his message will carry on and will be heard all around the world. So our important message about your body, staying safe, staying healthy, staying well, breathing well from James as well, and also that remarkable journey that Ben has gone on. Thank you from all of us here at Scaresbrick Hall and all of our friends around the world in the global classroom. We wish you all the best, stay safe, and goodbye from us.